Welcome back to the channel. It's LtBuzzLitebeer, and we are now at T-minus 34 days until blast off into early access. And 2 days ago, Bethesda broke radio silence, dropping a trio of animated shorts. Now, one in particular instantly caught the attention of viewers because of it featuring a piece of tech Starfield fans are clamoring for. Now, I've been sifting through all the available Starfield footage, and I found some interesting bits and have a few ideas about the discussion of mechs in Starfield. I appreciate all the support you've been showing my Starfield uploads. Remember to hit subscribe and ring the notifications bell to receive my latest upload alerts. Likes, comments, shares are greatly appreciated. I've included chapters for ease of viewing, and let's get this one going. First off, and the piece of footage that has reignited this mech discussion was from the Settled Systems Where Hope is Built animated trailer that dropped 2 days ago, featuring 17 seconds of pilotable mechs, as Vanna, the lead character's parents, are shown fighting for the Free Star Collective in the Colony Wars, which took place 20 years prior to the start of Starfield. Both of these mechs are bipedal and feature cannons on each arm, along with some basic armor plates in the shoulder areas. And if we look at the cockpit, or what we think are the cockpits, and then draw some size comparisons to a human, and yes, while much larger than a full-size adult, these mechs are not on the level of what we would see in, say, Pacific Rim and the Jaegers, which are designed to tackle much larger creatures in hand-to-hand combat. But when we see these animated mechs in action, there are several pan-in and pan-out clips that give us a basic idea of how large they are, with this top portion acting as the seated pilot area. And if we give it a height of, say, 7 feet, top to bottom, and then compare that to the height from the top of the cockpit to the top of the feet, we could approximate their height somewhere around, I'd say, 35 feet tall, give or take a bit, as this is just an approximation. So they are large, but not oversized. And a possible source of influence for size and design of these mechs came from a Todd Howard interview back in June 2022, when he was responding to a question about space combat, and that it was partly inspired by FTL and MechWarrior. And although the response was to a question about space combat, the team was clearly inspired by MechWarrior. And this could translate into their thoughts and implementations of mechs and size of mechs into Starfield. And when we take a look at this trailer for MechWarrior 5, we get a somewhat accurate size comparison to a mech versus a standard human. Fast forward some 20 years from the Colony Wars, and now we no longer see working mechs, as only the wreckage remains. And the question is, what happened to them? Were they outlawed after the Free Star Collective defeated the United Colonies? Were they seen as just too destructive, and therefore, in this time of tentative peace, seen as an act of war? Well, that's not yet known, but what we now see is that those large piloted weapons of war have been significantly scaled back into more standardized sizes and are now fully robotic. And here is where VASCO enters the picture, and through this Starfield feature titled Meet VASCO, we get to see a very early version of Constellation's expeditionary robot, which clearly Lunar Robotics did not intend for basic companion purposes. VASCO was heavily refurbished to meet the requirements of Constellation, but looking at this robot's early configuration, and it was heavily armed with a right arm that did not feature a hand, instead being replaced by twin 6-barrel cannons. Adding in this animated footage in a side-by-side comparison, and again, we see this use of cannon arms, raising the question of which design influenced the other. Did these battle mechs from 30 years ago inspire the look and design of VASCO? Now, the peace between the United Colonies and Free Star Collective has been described as uneasy. And if they outlawed mechs, could robots like VASCO have been their answer to arm themselves but live within the restrictions of that peace? Swinging back around and taking another look at this early weaponized version of VASCO, and besides the right arm cannons, it also features 3 more side-by-side pods of each 6 barrels mounted on the upper left shoulder area, and a Gatling gun style weapon on the right shoulder. Now, this weapon has remained intact with VASCO's current configuration, and we've seen it in action through some of the current Starfield footage. And apparently, VASCO is easily weaponized, as this spare parts vendor in Akila City has been seen with modular bits and pieces just sitting in a parts bin. And there's also this similarity in large armor plating showing on VASCO's early militarized format and the animated mechs shown in the footage from the Colony Wars, possibly leading us again to a theory that VASCO's design was based on these early battle mechs, but heavily scaled down in size and now removing the pilot in favor of full robotics. If we are correct in assuming VASCO's design is based on these early mechs, and we see that VASCO is easily customizable and modular, could the mechs be the same? Meaning, if we can get a mech, could we source, repair, and modify our mechs with relative ease? And finally, within the structure of Starfield, we need to discuss a source to acquire robotics or tech, such as a mech. Now, we've seen robotics as a talent, actually on one of our companions, Barrett, who's a decent level in this skill, and we can also invest our skill points into this trait as well. But the theory is that the robotics trait will allow us to deal more damage to robots and turrets. Also based on the Starfield direct footage, the Varun seem to have a heavy investment into technology, and from the footage, they lean on robotics, both in a quadruped format, which we've seen VASCO attacking, and also in a standard bipedal configuration called the Model A. Now, another source could be the Crimson Fleet, as they would be able to loot and source something like this, although it could cost a theoretical fortune to purchase it from them, and we might be able to again lean on Barrett and his relationship with this criminal faction to make the acquisition easier. Now, in the past, we've seen Bethesda's ability to create and install power armor into the Fallout series, and piloting a mech could in theory operate in much the same manner, with Howard's previous comments of no drivable vehicles leading to a possible loophole of piloting versus drivable. I mean, who knows? I would personally geek out if we could eventually take on, say, the Varun on Alpha Andraste 3 or some other planet, take down a robotics facility and loot an actual mech. Maybe it is still heavily damaged and we need to steadily upgrade and repair it. Maybe it is fully functional and just needs a power source, like in Fallout 4. Either way, I'm all in. And let's wrap this one up with a screenshot that I found from the direct presentation that may confirm functional mechs are indeed in the game. Now, this was a still taken by a member of the dev team during their gameplay, and if you look up there, those look to me to be mech legs. Now, I can't tell if the mech is in motion and has jumped through the air, although I'm leaning towards a theory that it is suspended in the air, as in a repair facility, and it could be something that we could possibly get into and pilot. Also, it could be a boss encounter of some kind, where we never get to physically interact with the mech other than to do battle against it, as in an enemy faction member hops in and activates the mech's weapon systems against us. Anyways, I'm still hopeful that we do get the opportunity to acquire and use a mech for planet exploration. And if it isn't in the base game, it could always be added through DLC or possibly one of those incredible Bethesda game modders. What are your thoughts on mechs in Starfield? Did that last reveal shot from the direct presentation convince you that there is a mech in our future? Sound off in the comment section below. Remember to hit subscribe and ring the notifications bell to receive my latest upload alerts. Likes, comments, shares are always appreciated. All my socials can be found in the video description. Shout out to the nearly 129,000 of you that have stuck with me and hit subscribe, and a huge thanks goes to my patrons over on Patreon. Until the next one, this is LtBuzzLitebeer signing off.